And welcome everybody to the Between Two Wheels podcast, episode 182. In today's show, we've got a special guest, returning podcast host, Chris Flower, but we're going to talk about Chris Froome. He splits with Ineos. What's that mean for his future? Contador does some Everesting. Phil Guyman's head explodes. Will Europe, the restriction on travel, really limit the Tour de France if it even happens? Some things we make go. Chris Flower, welcome to episode 182. It's been a long haul, missing you on the podcast. Thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Might have some technical issues. My headphones batteries just told me they're low, so we may be going back to that echo issue here.
Okay, well, if we do an echo, you may just have to mute yourself a little bit, but we'll work on that, folks, and hopefully mitigate. Are you not a tech guy? I was in an assumption you knew technology. Is this not correct?
I do. It's just I rarely use these features in this environment.
Okay.
So I do have other headphones, but they're pretty beefy. All of my plug-in headphones are in my car for when I travel to your office to do the podcast in studio.
I got some extra ones here for you.
Can you email them to me?
I can't email them at all. I don't know what
dial, so
I don't know why you're worried about. I don't know why you're worried about the look of the headphones. I mean, if people are watching this, you're really low on the screen. It would help to have something higher anyway. Oh, look at you, Ajit.
Well, I didn't realize that you were going to crop my image.
Okay. Well, we can do. Look at these options I have. Would you prefer that?
There we go.
And Curt didn't like this view, but the cropped image is a little bit. We'll go back and forth. Give the viewers some things that they want. First of all, how are you doing? And every once in a while I see you on the bike. We were kind of doing some stuff. I don't know if you want to say group rides, and then. But I just seen you waving at us the other day. Did speak with you a little bit. How's your life going with the new normal or new world?
I don't know if we call it new normal. It's kind of world D3 or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm doing okay. I'm trying to get some riding in, and I think since the whole COVID lockdown thing kicked off, this might be my 5th attempt at restarting to build some fitness. So I'm a good 2 weeks into it, and it feels like maybe I'm developing some type of pattern, which is nice. Yeah, I think I jumped into a few group rides when the coast was relatively clear there for a few weeks, and realized that my fitness was not up to snuff, and a lot of people have been kind of leveraging this downtime to either remain or regain some fitness.
Right.
So it kind of put me on the back foot and made me aware of the fact that I should.
Oh no, I think your headphones are dying on us.
Uh-oh.
Yep. So you may have to mute yourself when I talk, but look, yes, it's interesting. I talked to Mark Tucker, and we were. You can't hear me if you mute. Well, actually, you can maybe mute yourself, and that would help on the feedback. Let's try that. How's that now? You chose to mute yourself, it says, so I can't unmute you. You're gonna have to unmute yourself, Chris.
I wasn't saying anything.
Okay. Well, we're okay. I was talking to Mark Tucker, and he went out there, and I was actually Mike Sayers as well the other day. Just people's fitness and how everyone's kind of been ramping up. And we've talked about this. I've been able to get more fit than I have in quite some time. One of my but there's really no goal, right? So with the issue of there's really no goal, but you're riding more. I tend to not care about the weight as much. I know that should be, symbiotic with those. So I'm just indulging myself because, hey, why not? And I'm just getting fitter. So I'm probably really good for the downhill right now. Is that kind of where you're at? Or are you not even getting the fit part?
I'm definitely not getting the weight part down. I can tell you that. In terms of motivation, yeah, there's no racing, but there's always that. Sometimes it almost feels like the race rides are more motivating than the actual races, because it's the same folks you see every week on the same climb, whether it's Sierra College or Ridge, and you always want to do well on those. And I feel like those are always good motivators to stay fit. And I think we've talked about it with Curt as well, where he actually finds the race rides to be more competitive and motivating than actual racing. I think just kind of depends where you're at with your fitness and everything. But
no, you're
my
right.
weight's not great. My fitness is up and down. I imagine at some point you want to talk about Jason's virtual whatever time trial series that's ongoing. And relative to where my fitness is, I did a little effort yesterday and did better than I thought I would. So I guess as long as it's flat to downhill, I'll remain somewhat competitive.
Yeah. Look, you've got there's different skills we all have. And one of those you definitely have is being able to just ride really hard, and time trial is basically, I guess, a way to say it too. So yeah, yesterday we did just a 6 mile, had one little, 5-foot hump in it, right? It's really nothing. And you came out there and slayed a really good time. You want to tell about the your kind of your chasing at the what you thought was going on? I thought that was kind of humorous.
Yeah, no, it was it was good and bad depending on how you look at it. So yeah, like you said, it was a 6 mile effort, 3 miles out, 3 miles back. There's really no hill. There's a little short blip where you've got to go over a canal out speed, but nothing too major. So there's really no start time. It's just show up when you want, as long as you get done before 9 p.m. So we don't keep chasing up too late while he tallies scores. So I got there a little around lunchtime, and as I got close to the start, I did see a rider start in front of me, and I figured they were probably 10, 15 seconds ahead of me. And I figured I would kind of follow them and use them as like a carrot to chase, and that would kind of make the segment a little more motivating. The segment starts right when you exit this tunnel that goes under the freeway, and the rider in front of me just like stood up and went into a full sprint, and it was impressive. And it was like, okay, well, this guy's going to blow up, so I'll just kind of pace myself and I'll catch them. And 2 miles into it, which you're almost to the turnaround time, and I'm not gaining on this guy, and he's actually putting a gap on me, and I feel like I'm going really hard. The power's good, the speed's good, and I'm just not closing it down. I have no idea who it is. And I get to the turnaround, and the rider in front of me starts coming back toward me, and I realize it's Cole Davis. And it's like, oh, okay, right. That explains why I'm not able to make up any ground on him. It was good and bad. It was kind of like morally killing me because I just buried myself to try and catch this mystery rider, and now I've got to turn around and try and maintain power for 3 miles back, and it made it a little challenging. Like I said, I kind of blew up in the last couple of miles and pedaled squares into the finish and salvaged a decent time, which I was happy with. But yeah, I don't know if I would have ridden it differently. I may have gone out a little easier if I wasn't chasing Cole. In the end, I think he put 13 seconds on to me, which I'll take it.
Yeah. So let me know. Did you? Because I know how you are. I'm sure you did a kind of a breakdown of your power going out and coming back. And did that really screw things up for you? Was that helpful? Maybe the demise at the end wasn't enough to overcome the benefit you got from chasing a pro. Let's just say that.
It actually, looking at the power going out versus coming in, the power out was about 2 watts less than coming back. So in the end, it was relatively flat. I think it probably helped that Cole was going at a relatively steady state as well, so I could kind of gauge where I was relative to him. But it was still being aware of the fact that, yeah, as hard as I go out, I've still got to turn around and come back in. So I didn't just try and blow myself out of the water. So I tried to keep the power hard, but not like killing myself, knowing that it was a relatively longer effort compared to what I've been doing lately. So.
Yeah, so that was a fun one yesterday. So the winner was Jason Graffath, and he beat Cole by 3 seconds, I think, and then you. So that was like 13:27, 13:30, and then you were like 13:43, I want to say 42 somewhere in there, and then that was 43. Okay, and then it was what 19 seconds to me at or what is that? Yeah, excuse me. I was 14:02, and so there was some discrepancy there, distance. So did he sprint before the tunnel? Was he sprinting out of the tunnel? What was and who did you think that was up there?
So
some rando?
No, so he kind of rolled, and I was rolling up to the start. So like I said, the start is on the other side of the tunnel. he kind of did like a standing stop start about 200 meters before the tunnel, and he didn't sprint into the tunnel. He kind of wound up like you would, just kind of cruising into a start line. And I had no idea who it was. There was another rider at the tunnel entrance, and I figured teammates. They were buddies, and it was a Rio rider that I didn't recognize. So I had no idea who it was, because I'd forgotten that Cole has come out and done a couple of these before. So he wasn't on my mind in terms of people that I would be having to chase out there. Yeah. But yeah, he definitely gave it a good kick once he got out of the tunnel and crossed the start line.
How'd you feel about, did you take, I posted a quick video because I did some real cut up real close. And I was really amazed at the way the camera was able to pick up the light in the tunnel. Because that was nothing, I didn't do any editing for that. But I didn't go full bore through the tunnel. I mean, I went pretty hard, like fast, but I was just ramping it up. And I guess he was, sprinting. But how'd you feel about the tunnel before and after? Because there's not much room in there if you happen to come along someone else. Or did you not care? You just said, go for it.
I mean, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, been through the tunnel both directions hundreds and hundreds of times, solo, group rides, people coming at me. So I've got some comfort riding in the tunnel, so it wasn't too overwhelming. But I didn't know where the start was out of the tunnel. I kind of know where the segment is because I've done it before. I use that out and back a lot for just steady state intervals.
Yeah, you had already had the second best time anyway.
Yeah, so I don't know, going out of the tunnel, it was fine, and coming back into the tunnel was fine. The only thing that adds a little bit of a challenge is the segment does drop you off completely exhausted at the tunnel entrance. And right. If you're not comfortable, if you haven't done that segment a lot, there's a couple weird little like bumps at the tunnel entrance that could totally catch you off guard. There's definitely potential for something to happen there, but for me it was fine because I've been lucky enough to do that enough. The one thing I did like about your video of the tunnel is that I think I noted on your Facebook post, it had like a really Wonka vibe to it.
Yeah,
you kind of got that like spiraling light effect going on.
It was, I was going to say, or even kind of like a Battlestar Galactica or Buck Rogers coming out when they're ejecting out into the space. I don't know, kind of had that too.
Yeah, you can save that little like 5-second clip and use it for any video that you've got now, where you can kind of go into the tunnel and come out on the coast, or go into the tunnel and come out in a crit. You got a lot of options you can use that for.
I like that because when especially coming out on the first side on the way out, the beginning, it bursts out into the light, so it kind of just blanks the screen out. I like that. I like that. You're becoming a video director here. Hey, speaking of tunnels, tunnel vision, Chris Froome, that's all he wants to do is win the Tour. He's going to Israel Startup Nation. The big announcement. There's been a lot of rumors, unless you wanted to keep talking about yourself getting third best time at the time trial yesterday. But what do you think about the Froome going to Israel Startup Nation, the pros and cons of this, and how it's going to affect the Tour this year? Because this is starting next year. So, he's not happy about being they can't guarantee a leader position. Egan Bernal, Thomas, and Froome, the three big guys there at Ineos. Who knows? Carapaz, they've got all kinds of guys coming up. So is he going to go rogue this year? What do you think about, what's your whole thought process of this? And then we'll kind of dig into some little spots.
I guess the question I have first off is the roster for the Tour set? Is he going? Is it confirmed? I mean, if he is, I think it adds some pros and cons for Ineos, because you've got Froome is a good candidate to win in his own right, but do you really want your outgoing rider to win, or do you want your kind of new up and coming star to win in Bernal? So do you set Froome up,
defending champ too,
right? Defending champ, or do you set Froome up to say, hey, you're going to support Bernal until Bernal falters, like we used to do with you and Tom? I don't think they're going to be able to take we'll find a leader on the road type of scenario like they've done in the past when they've got 3 guys, possibly 4 guys who can win it outright. And not only that, Froome, he hasn't really raced since being injured, so he's not really a proven commodity right now. So I think if you're Brailsford, you really just have to bring him in as a support role.
Well, you're bringing him in.
That roster.
Well, yeah, you're bringing him in as a support role, but are you bringing him in at all on the tour? What do you think?
What's the schedule like for this year for the Grand Tours? I forget.
Tour de France first, then the Giro, and then the Vuelta. And then, there's a little mishmash, a bunch of races, but let's just ignore those and just assume that the 3 Grand Tours. And I don't think you're going to be able to, well, you definitely, I think the Giro and the Vuelta are overlapping. So you're not going to be able to combo those up. And I don't know if you'd be able to really do Tour and Giro, and you might be able to do Tour Vuelta, but it's pretty bang, bang, bang.
I mean, I think if I'm Brailsford, I send him to the Vuelta or the Giro. I don't send him to the Tour. I mean, yeah, he's a 4-time champ, but you've got to kind of look to the future while retaining some sense of kind of team camaraderie during the race. I mean, if you think about when it was the Contador Lance duo, circa, what was that, 2000 and something?
9.
That didn't seem to work out that well. If you look to the time when Froome was riding with Wiggins, when we kind of had those dueling personalities, that didn't really work out that well. I mean, yeah, they won, but it seemed like it caused quite a rift in the team. So do you want to do that with the rider is going to be heading out?
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the, before there was talk about maybe him going to one of these other teams during mid-season, and there's a lot of pros and cons there. You don't want to just, what part of it would be the value and trying to, at that point, sell him to another team for some value, whether, now he's just not going to resign. So that's kind of similar. But yeah, there's a risk now of bringing him, having him kind of screw your whole team up. But then, I mean, you made one comment, which is, we don't really know what he's done because after the crash. True. But part of the benefit for him too is this long delay of everybody not racing. So I think in some way it kind of puts him back into everyone else. He's able to probably do a lot of different training. Hasn't had pressure of trying to race all year and maybe be good or bad. So there's some mystery to that, but it might actually play a benefit as well. I don't know.
That's hard to say because I mean some of the guys like Bernal or Carapaz, they're moving from kind of the early 20s to still early 20s, while Froome is moving from his mid-30s to his later 30s. So
right.
He's not aging in a positive sense, while the other guys are potentially maturing into better riders. So it's
right.
Time off for Froome, I don't think is anything that's going to work well for him. Thomas is kind of in a similar boat, and I have no idea what the course looks like for the Tour this year. I don't know if they've changed it in response to the whole COVID thing, or if they've kind of left it as it is. I'm not sure if it's the course that really favors a Thomas over a Bernal. Obviously, Bernal is not going to be the best TT guy. So if it's a really TT-heavy course, maybe you do consider bringing Froome as kind of a last-ditch guy that could help win.
So I will tell you about the tour that unless they look, I don't think they start the original part because it started in a different country, Hungary or something. But then they're going to be, no, that was the Giro. So the tour starts in Nice and it's all around there. And then there's only one time trial. And that is the second to last day up the Planche de Belfi that they did that last year, stage 9 or so, 6 or 9 last year. So uphill time trial, that's it. So, kind of crazy. I don't know if that's not, is that bad for, I think that's good for Bernal, right? I mean, that can't hurt him at all.
Yeah, I think that would definitely work in his favor more so than like a few 30, 40K long flattish TTs that would support somebody like a Roglic or a Dumoulin or somebody like that. So it seems like that works in his favor and kind of continues along the path of trying to set the course up for a French rider who doesn't TT all that well himself. So it seems like they're still trying to keep those guys in the mix as long as they can.
I think this will be, I'm actually kind of excited about this. I like to see them spread it out a little bit more, more teams having to fight. Because you're getting, Jumbo Visma, suddenly they have a 3-headed monster, Kruijswijk, Dumoulin, and Roglic. Now Ineos, they've kind of had the 3-headed, now maybe 4. And then, who's kind of out there. Well, so I love seeing this. I love seeing Froome go away. Maybe it'll rejuvenate him. And it's also a team that could use a little bit of this, I don't know, Dan Martin's there, but it's not happening mid-season. So it'll be interesting to see next year who they pull in to help this. So I'm pretty excited about that. Maybe it's like when Jordan's done and he went to, the Bullets or general, what do they call them? I think that was the Bullets, right?
The Wizards?
Washington Wizards. That's right. I'm Wes Unseld days, I guess. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. What do you think about the prospects for like Israel's startup nation with Froome coming there? I mean,
I know of like 2 or 3 riders on the team,
personally,
including Froome. So that would be Travis McCabe, and then Andre Greipel, who's on again, off again with injuries, and I guess Froome. I unfortunately I don't know a lot about the team. Oh, and isn't James Pickley on that team?
Yes, yeah.
Canadian? So that's the extent to which I know about that team. Unfortunately, they seem to really build up last year, and then my guess is that 2020 was going to be kind of their bigger breakout year, but it just never happened.
Think of you mentioned McCabe. Just a side note here. What a horrible. I mean, the guy's his age is kind of pushing him, and he finally gets his chance to go and see what he can do this year with Israel. And then there's like no racing. Maybe for him, it's going to be a good thing that he doesn't have to just do this whole season, and he can just do something compact and do enough to get him to next year to another contract. At least I'm hoping so.
Yeah, and he did relatively well in the early races he did. I think he did Curtis.
That's right.
And he was usually either leading out or he was in the mix instead of just like not making it to the sprint line. So yeah, he's getting up there in age, but I think he's suffered from not getting to do these races as his career went through. Because I mean, when he was doing some of the lower level races, whether it's Concowie or something like that, he usually had good finishes. He did well in California, so he's definitely a competitive guy when it comes to those races. I don't know if he's going to be a kind of Marcel Kittel, Dylan Groenewegen type sprinter, but he'll be more of like the Peter Sagan type sprinter, where it's maybe something with a 200-meter uphill finish that's his bread and butter. So
well,
be good to see him in the mix.
Yeah, when we saw him at the Tour of California, you and I were in the press room, and he came in the Sacramento stage. He is a little guy. I mean, I don't know why I'm always amazed. We're around cyclists, and they they look big or whatever, they look small, but they're comparing to each other. And he did not look like. I mean, obviously he's able to get over climbs too. So I don't know about a Kittle but yeah, I don't know. I just want to see him do stuff. Yeah, he's a top 10 sprinter in some of these, early season stage races, and not the big tour, but he's definitely a guy that can help. And they had a sprinter or two on that team that was doing pretty well. So, how about any last comments about Froome moving or just prospects for the tour?
A lot of talk about the tour. Well, I can't really say the tour because I haven't seen rosters, but I think it's cool to see a lot of up and coming teams that'll be in the mix over the next couple of years. UAE's got Pogacar. It looks like he and Primo are having really good kind of in-country races for the national championships. I think Pogacar won the TT and Primo won the road race, which is kind of the opposite of what I would expect for those two. But you've got that team coming up. You've got botch the name, but what do they call Lotto Jumbo now?
Jumbo Visma.
Yeah, I mean they've obviously become a powerhouse. Arkea Samsic, assuming that Nairo Quintana still has some legs. Again, if this year's tour is really light on the TT, then you've got him there with maybe even Warren Barguil as a support guy. So a lot of cool opportunities in the tour this year to see hopefully something more than just which rider can sit on the back of the Ineos train and not blow up. So
have you ever heard of Barguil supporting anybody?
Himself.
Right. I mean, he got kicked out of the Vuelta for not helping what was his teammate at the time was Sunweb. I'm slipping on the name, but yeah. Look, Arkea Samsic is interesting for a few things. One is, early season, Nairo was on a tear, and he was. I wanted to just say he was just performing a little bit more like he had done like in 16 and 15 and a few years before. So, we obviously got a little stagnant here, and you don't know what's going to happen. On Jumbo, so Sepp Kuss, it looks like he might be making the team. There's another little news report out about it. I had read some other things also that he had he stayed in Girona, and then he's been training up in Andorra. So he never came over to the States. He stayed over there. He didn't have any travel problems. I had mentioned just, there's travel restriction ban, and we saw Ian Garrison try to get over there and get denied. Nelson Powless, you look at his Strava now, he's over there in Girona. So he made the split, so to speak. What's your take on some of the travel and the possibility of not having some of these riders? I mean, is he going to make it back over to, I don't know who all is over here, but there's some Colombians that I would imagine Nairo might have a problem getting back over there as well.
Yeah, where's Bernal right now? Is he?
Yeah.
Is he back in Europe training?
I think all those guys. I'd read something earlier. There's potential travel problems, and I think all those Colombian guys had gone home. So, speculation on my part.
Yeah, that can make it challenging. And if you think about who's potentially representing USA in the tour, I mean, we've got half a dozen riders, maybe, and obviously they're going to be in support roles. Oh boy, for Larry Warbach, I think he trained over there, and he may have stayed over there, so he might be able to kind of ride with his team. But yeah, I think Nielsen's over there and Sepp Kuss, and I think that might be it. So I think it just comes down to how convincing your documentation and supporting evidence is to get you into your destination country as to whether or not you can get there. So I think Nielsen left after the ban rolled in based on his kind of Strava ride.
I think so. What was your understanding of how he got in and why Garrison didn't, as an example?
From what I read, I haven't read anything about Nielsen other than seeing him wave at us one day on Coffee Republic and then seeing his rides in right. Spain more recently. But the only article I read about Garrison was on CyclingNews, and just said that he didn't have the right visa, or he didn't have a visa at all. He had a passport and a letter from what's the boss's name there? Quick Step.
The Fever.
Yeah, and that was it. It's like, well, you might need more than that to get into the country. He probably carries a lot of weight in Belgium, but maybe not that much. So
right.
I think
it reminds me of and I've seen the bench warmers where they get the one kid to play on the Little League team. He's obviously like 30 years old, and he has, let me see your how old you are, and he just has a crayon written page that says I'm 12. I'm sure Garrison had more documents than that, but you got to expect a visa, right? So it's probably a doctor's note or something along the lines of that. I like to speculate, so we'll throw out those. Do you have concrete info?
The add-in though is that the player in Benchwarmers, his visa and birth certificate also included like $40.
Right.
So I think maybe Garrison just greased the wrong wheels there when he was trying to get on the plane. So if he had brought in like $200, he might be riding in Europe right now. So yeah, outside of that, I don't really have any concrete details about who's going where, unfortunately.
All right. Well, so there's TJ. I imagine he's going to be riding the tour. Ben King, perhaps as well. Kiel Reinen. There's quite a few different Americans out there. And since they're all compact, I would imagine this year more than ever, you're going to get a chance for riders to do a grand tour that they might not have been able to before, just simply because you're not going to be able to spread everyone out that you normally would. So that'll be some I think it'll produce some interesting racing and great opportunities for people. And I especially want to see Sepp in the tour.
And you've also got to figure that some of those guys, Kiel Reinen in particular, he's probably going to be more on the classic squad, because those races are going on the same time too. I think the first one of those, Strade Bianche in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So it's we're talking about the Tour and the Vuelta and the Giro, but there's a lot of those big classics that are career targets for a lot of these guys, and they're going to need a support team as well. So not only are riders going to be spread thin dealing with the Grand Tours, but they're going to be spread thin dealing with the Classics, because you've got, I think Paris-Roubaix is still on the schedule. Flanders is still on the schedule. Strade Bianche. I haven't heard if Mont and Remo's back on, but you know, there's guys who don't give a rip about the Grand Tours, but they'll sell themselves out for those Classics races. So it's trying to compact that much of a race season into, realistically, we're looking at 3 months.
Right.
That's going to put a lot of stressors on riders to probably overperform over short periods of time, and also going to add some logistical challenges of trying to have your service course spread across the continent at haphazard times when they're probably used to having kind of a set schedule of where buses and equipment is supposed to be at certain times.
Yeah, there's going to be some scheduling people that are maybe the better teams are going to, you know, because you're right. You know, there's some of those classic guys though, while that's their focus, they still will come to the tour and, you know, be a big help. You know, you need your rollers and some of these other things. So, you know, you bring up some interesting points that you might not realize at the time. A team might be a little weak in a few spots because they don't have some big heavy, you know, control in the front that you just, maybe that one guy that you would need there. So, because he's out doing Paris-Roubaix duties. So,
right. I mean, you look at guys who have won stages in the Tour, or whether it's the Giro, the Volta, but they're also classics heavies, like Keith Benoot. I mean, he's a guy who lives for the classics, but he's obviously a strong rider, and he's a good support player, but can also win stages in any Grand Tour if things play out in his favor. So it puts a guy like that in a position where, what basket do you put your eggs in? Because you're really only getting one shot this year. So do you put it on the classics, or do you put it on the opportunity to win like a 10th stage in Grand Tour? It's difficult.
Good point. I like all of those that info there. Good info on the class, bringing the classic riders in there. So a few weeks, Strade Bianche, that'll be great. I wonder how the weather is going to play a part in some of these, because we're really getting into the point of the year where you're not going to have probably chances of rain as much, probably a little more hot in some of these things. So, you know, I think it might change the whole concept, really, the landscape of like a Paris-Roubaix, maybe even Strade Bianche. A lot of these ones that you know, that's the big issue. So that'll be something to take a look at as well.
Yeah, I think the problem, well, not problem, but the issue there is like Strade Bianche. I mean, if you look at all the finishes of that race, it's always in just treacherous conditions, guys coming in caked in mud. Not the crashing is great, but you have that element of the slippery surfaces and whatnot. So if you're doing a dry, dusty Strade Bianche, is it going to have the same appeal? I think Paris-Roubaix moved later into the year, maybe October or potentially November. So I think you start pushing it back into the time frame where you may get some wetter weather. I think with some of the other Grand Tours being later in the year, you do add the kind of
snow.
The snow and the element of seasonal change happening at a greater rate in the mountains than you do in the summer. So, yeah, you might get a freak rainstorm. You might even get a freak snowstorm that you're just not expecting. I mean, obviously, was it the Tour 2 years ago when they had to deal with the mud flows and whatnot and had to terminate stages? I mean, you add that, I think, in all the Grand Tours now. Maybe the Tour itself will be safest in that regard, but the other ones I think will be an interesting challenge. So it'll be interesting to see how much of it actually goes forward, B, how well it goes, and C, do they kind of retool the scheduling moving forward in response to this? Like, hey, we can probably shift some of these races around that cause headaches for us throughout the rest of the year. So I think it'll be a good opportunity to kind of look back at the overall World Tour schedule and maybe potentially do some shake-up.
Yeah, you know, all sports are doing that. I mean, there's some conflict with, you know, baseball and some of these other basketball, and maybe this is a chance for even them to kind of rearrange their schedule so there's, you know, not changing overlap. I don't know. What about this lovely thing? And I'm hoping that my biggest desire of getting the World Tour back on schedule is so that we can stop seeing someone break an Everesting record. I have but yet I'm talking about it only because Contendor goes out and, well, first of all, we had Lachlan Morton getting it. It's not valid. Buckman, right? He got it, but it wasn't valid. And then Morton said, screw it, I'm going back out, and redoes it again. Now Contador, I know you're big on this Everesting thing. So why don't you give us your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's worth talking about right now, just because everything else is just speculation. There's no racing, so it's like, yeah, what else are you going to talk about? Who's going to be the 8th rider for Arkea Samsic? It's like, that doesn't have much real. Right. But like you said, yeah, Lachlan Morton went out and did it 2 weeks ago, and everybody said, oh, that's the bar. Nobody's going to pass that because he's a high level, whatever, climber for the World Tour teams. Right. And 2 days later, they said, no, that's unofficial. So I think he did it on like 3 days rest, went back out, redid it on a more challenging set of roads. I don't know the details of it, but bested his time and set the new bar. And then must have been today, I suppose. I'm not sure where he did. Contador beat that time by 2 minutes 37 seconds. So interesting in the sense that, how long has Contador been retired now? 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah.
And
I wanted to say 16 or 17 was his end. So
obviously he's been rising because he can't just really do that off the couch.
Right.
So, now, what does that say for not that he's not a good rider, but he's in his mid-30s. He's been away from the World Tour scene for a few years. He's probably not training as heavily as he was when he was a World Tour guy. So you've got a guy who's retired, comes out and just resets the bar. So, what's the actual integrity of that bar at this point then? Is it as good as it can get, or if you took somebody like a Quintana or a Froome and said, hey, go make this be your hour record for the year and see what you can do? What do you think the limit is on the performance of that from the real highest caliber climbers right now?
Right. And the Lachlan Morton win on that was just, he was the best that had gone at that point. That's really what my thinking was. And I don't even know, comparing him with Buckman, if maybe that would have been a better, but you think you're right. Nairo, someone of these just flat out pure climbers, Froome, right? I mean, someone that can take the pounding of a 7-hour ride and just really, stage 19 or so a few years ago, whatever, he, waxed everybody, that kind of thing. It would be interesting to see what he could put up. And so, Contador does kind of diminish Lachlan's. I mean, does he, or do you say, look, all those years of that dope just flowing through his body has changed him, and he's just still this, donkey that rides like a pony. So,
he's been stocking up on that unique beef, I think is all it is, since he's retired. But I did listen to a Phil Guyman piece about the Everesting, and one of the things that he points out that's one of the biggest keys in it is selecting the right climb, and selecting the right climb that has the best descent, because he seems to be of the mindset of, you're at your cap when it comes to climbing. The real place you're going to make up time is going to be on the descent. You might not think much of it, but when you do a descent 100-something times, and if you're making up 2 seconds on each descent, I mean, that's a little over 3 minutes saved right there. And if Contador is beating Morton by 2 minutes 37 seconds, did it come from the climb? Did it come from the descent? I don't know. So that's one of the challenges with the whole Everesting record, is that it's not on the same course. It's on a self-selected course. So it's, is it ever apples to apples? I don't know. I mean, if you think about hour records, they're trying to be on as same of a plane as possible because it's on a track. So the track doesn't necessarily change. All I guess it can based on length and pitch and all that. But it seems like there's more variability in the route you select for your Everesting record than you do for your hour record. Although the hour record being around as long as it is, and you guys have that thing dialed into perfection when it comes to air pressure and temperature and elevation,
yeah,
etc. So,
the course differences is very interesting, and that's kind of the cool thing about the Everesting. Is if there can be anything cool about it, is that you can do it in your area, someone else can do it in their area. But to really, if you want to be a tech, data geek, you're really going to have to try to do the same course and see exactly what you're talking about, who's making up the time on the descents and who's doing this and this and this. Emma Pooley had done, she blasted the record, I guess, as well. So she did 8 hours and 53 minutes. That's a long time on a bike. And what was Contador, 7 something, I think.
Yeah, and that not only is it a long time on a bike, but
7:23.
I did see a little clip from Contador Cycling Tips' Instagram, and saying Contador's route looked like it was in a pretty heavily wooded area on something that was maybe a single car width in roadside. So obviously it's one where, okay, Contador most likely was doing it on a closed road because he's got the pull to do that. I don't know about Emma Pooley's route. I'm not sure where she did it, but it seems like a lot of folks are doing this on open road, and maybe Contador got everything dialed into perfection, got the road closed, and gave him some freedom to get down those descents a little faster.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the kit he's wearing. I don't know if you got to see that.
It looks pretty loud. Something with a lot of
black and white, but just really, really, like, I don't know who designed it. Maybe his son or daughter or wife did. So, and they're blind.
Supposed to match his bike because that's the new bike line that he and somebody else came out with. I forget.
Yeah, I could see that. It looks like the zebra bike as well. Which is also an article on Cycling News talking about, and I always find this fascinating when you get someone like Froome talking about the bike he's going to ride next year. You get someone like Froome who's been on that Pinarello for years. And then, it's kind of Mark Cavendish, right? He rides the Specialized, and that's his big deal. And then he goes to Dimension Data at the time, and he starts having to ride the BMC or the Cervelo, and he's just complaining the whole time that he's losing sprints because of his bike. Someone like Froome has a lot of pull, and so it'd be interesting to see. I think that Israel rides the Factor bike, and so it'll be interesting to see if they stay on that, or if he has some deal that he wants to bring with him. I don't know. It's to me, that's kind of a side but interesting aspect of when a big rider changes teams. No input.
Okay. Now I think some of that is that probably comes down to the money side of it as well, because I don't know if Pinarello. I assume Pinarello is throwing money at Ineos to have them ride the bikes, because obviously that's a big selling point for the bike brand. I don't know if Factor is doing the same with Israel Startup. And not only that, but it's from a big enough name to pull Pinarello with him, and is Pinarello willing to have their bike under 2 riders or 2 teams with big payouts?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if the finances make sense there.
Yeah, because the interesting thing you see, all sports, right? Some are really good about like their product endorsement is just the biggest thing ever. You see that with the shoes in the NBA and whatnot. Sagan and Cavendish were more like that with bikes, right? With Specialized. That's kind of just, I think, the thing that probably sweeps them along. So I don't know if Froome doesn't really come across as kind of that sponsored pusher guy. I mean, and that he's really a guy that everyone's like, oh, I got to ride that because that gangly guy spins his bike. I got to get up and get me some of that. So I don't know that he's the big deal, but it'll be interesting to see what's happening there. Any other big news that you see or anything's on this? I mean, there's a few other items here. I saw women's La Course has been announced. They're going to do some climbing around the Nice area for the tour. The virtual Tour de France was going on. I don't know if you checked into any of that.
I have not checked into any of the virtual Tour de France. Is it open to anybody? Is it open to select riders? I know there's been some virtual stage races like virtual Redlands and stuff like that, but
Joe Martin, yeah.
I don't know if they're doing the same with the tour, and if they are, if there's like you've got to be on a team. I unfortunately I don't know anything about it.
Well, I know, and I just can see here, American Lauren Stevens. I think she either won or it says virtual Tour de France stage winner, so she won a stage. So also saw some of these guys, these pros that got on there and they were doing some crazy watts, and they're still losing to some people, and they're kind of just like baffled. I think it's just a specialty, right? I mean, you've done it, I haven't. But anytime you're on a trainer, it's just a little bit different than aspects of the road, and just doesn't thrill me as much. So
I did see something. They were live streaming a Zwift crit the other day, and that didn't really seem to jive, because a lot of crit racing isn't necessarily watts and power. It's more positioning and cornering and kind of being able to set yourself up to win. So it just seemed like they were doing a crit. I could see hill climbs or road races being closer to reality than a crit, but I can't imagine that the stages are going to be as long as a tour stage. And if you take a pretty high level rider that focuses their time and effort on indoor riding, they're probably going to be competitive at the end of an hour and a half effort on the trainer going up against the pro tour guy. Because there's, average Joes out there that can pop a big sprint. Jason Smith hits over 2,000 watts, and you put him on the trainer, and that probably will make him do well at the end of his whip race, which is really short.
Okay.
But if you try to get him over a bunch of El Pasos, he's probably not going to be there. So I get that some of the pros are baffled, but it'd be like going into a free throw competition against college players. Like, yeah, they'll do just as well against a middle of the pack pro. It's just, you've got to add in more complexity than just this whip race. It's like, yeah, you've got to be in a position to get to the finish to be competitive, and most of the average folks on this aren't going to do that in a real pro race.
No, of course. And so you're telling me that these virtual Tour de France, they don't have like transition stages that are like 7 hours long, but they're just sitting in the saddle all day long. That's not happening. I'm disappointed.
It's not happening, but I think they're probably still leveraging like the full-on massage and everything like that, and they're getting the nutrition taken care of. So I'm sure they're on the same footing there. It's just
doctors.
But the other thing I think that'll be interesting is we've got this really condensed World Tour schedule, and we didn't really touch on this yet. It sounds like World Championships are still going to be taking place, and there's riders who aren't going to be able to participate in their probably best discipline because they're obligated to go to the tour. I think Dumoulin said he's not going to be able to do the World Time Trials because he's either going to be at the tour or too fatigued from the tour. So it just seems like, again, condensing everything to make sure that we get every single race is kind of potentially shorting us on seeing the best of the best perform at Worlds, which is usually a really good show. And I don't know, and if you're the reigning world champion, oh gosh, who's the road guy right now?
Pedersen.
Yeah, if you're in his shoes, you kind of wish that they would give you a little reprieve for the year and say, hey, we're going to punt Worlds next year, since he never really got to do much racing as a lead guy in it. So I think that's another downside to condensing the schedule and trying to hit every single race instead of giving Worlds its own kind of dedicated time slot. And I think they're doing it in Switzerland this year.
I think so. So I'm trying to look on the schedule, the UCI World Tour schedule. There's a lot of overlapping, but it doesn't have all the races. So it doesn't even show. It doesn't show me everything. Yeah, the Giro and the Vuelta overlap. The Vuelta and Guangxi overlap. I know that's the one you wait for all year. Yeah. So the Giro, you've got Liège during this time. Flanders, all these Ardennes Classics, Tour de Flanders going on during the Giro. There's the World Championships. World Championships overlaps with the end of last day, it looks like, of the Tour de France. Tour de France ends on the 20th, and that's when the World Championship starts. So like first day is not the pros, right? So the last day of that is the Bink Bank Tour and La Flèche Wallonne. So maybe that's the one that's going to be part of the problem, because you go the road race. Oh no, Flèche is on the 30th. World Championship should be fine. I don't know who's complaining again.
I think it's a function of, you can be there, but you're not going to be.
Oh yeah, you're going to be trashed from the tour.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, if you're Tom Dumoulin and you're gearing up for the tour, whether you're the lead guy for the team or you're going to be the support guy through the last day, it's hard to get yourself fit and mentally ready to absolutely sell out for a TT. So it's and not only that, you can't really push a world course in Switzerland too late into the season. They do have some mountains there that get covered in snow. So, I think that's unfortunate. There wasn't a little better effort to try and make that all work so that you do get guys getting into Worlds.
Right, because then he's going to have to go against Campenerts, right, for the time trial, who's been doing. Have you read about or heard me talk about him, what he's doing? And he's sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber or whatever that is, that simulates elevation, and he's doing it at, he said, the very edge of what basically can kill you. So he's like, it was so bad that starting at Corona, he was hardly able to even get out and ride. He was trying to ride, but he was like, I was so weak. But you're just right to the point where your body is basically crushed. And then, but he's like, he thinks he's like Superman right now. So I don't know. Seems a little. He's very, very happy to talk about it. And so there's several news reports. And I think there had been one out, and then I think he tried to elevate it a little bit more. So he was telling people, hey, look at me. And it brings up an interesting thing of how's that different than what was the thing a few years ago there, just different things that people, what was the deal that Kittle and them were trying? It was like freezing something. I'm trying to remember, some ozone.
They were pulling blood out and then rerouting it back into the system in a continuous loop that it never necessarily left the flow of the body, but ozonating it in the process to increase oxygen carrying capacity.
Was that like, were they doing an ultraviolet light down there? Or was that's something else?
I think that's something else. That's what we're all looking for now to resolve this corona thing. But
right.
So I wonder if Campenard is, so he's taking a different approach to Everesting is what it really boils down to. He's trying to be a guy who can live up on Everest
right.
as opposed to climb. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a new record.
But my point is he's like, it basically has the effect of doing EPO or blood doping, you're so he's readily talking about it. It's not legal, which is interesting. It's not legal in some countries. But obviously he's staying in a place where it is. So
I imagine you've got to have, if you're the average Joe, you probably want to have some type of medical oversight when you're doing this.
Right.
I could see that being a cause for making it illegal in some countries. If you got folks just dying in their little homemade tents.
Yeah. Speaking of medical oversight, and we'll finish on this thing. Did you get to see the Lance Armstrong 30 for 30 yet? Or do you plan on it?
I plan on it. I just have not seen it yet. I've heard really good things about it.
I was, people, and I don't have cable. So I was like, I don't know when I'll see it. And I started looking around on my Amazon stuff, and you can buy it a la carte for like $2 that episode. And there was 2 episodes. So, and then there's also one about Bruce Lee that I may buy as well. But anyway, bought that one. And the other one, it was like midnight on a Saturday night. I stayed up till like 3 or 4 in the morning. Couldn't stop. It was fascinating. It was really well done. And one thing I would just, my concept, I want you to watch it at some point and give me your feedback on it. For me, it's like such a take back of all these people that, I was in the middle of watching so much action. And, I've told you and the viewers, listeners before that I'm kind of been rewatching a lot of those tours. And one thing you got to give Lance a lot of credit for is his strategy and his mental ability to be a leader and maybe a bit of a bully, but those kind of lead, no one ever said really Michael Jordan was a very warm-hearted guy either. So, you kind of have that aspect. But one thing that was interesting takeaway there, one of the ladies that had come out early and talked about some stuff, and Lance and all these things, the UCI is, at least back then, pretty dirty organization. So if you want to defund anything, maybe we should defund the UCI. I don't know. You on board for that one?
I don't fund them directly, so I don't have anything to say. Having watched it, was there anything new in it, or was it just kind of better produced than some of the prior Lance stories, or was it just kind of a better way of telling what was already known? No,
there is some new stuff. One thing that you can't grasp is, are you telling the truth? Because he does the comeback, and he says, I was still working with Michele's Ferrari, and Ferrari told me in absolute terms that there's no way you can even get close to crossing the line of cheating, right? So, and that's really all he says about that, intimating obviously that he came back and rode clean when he got third behind Contador. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not, but that's what he's contending, that that was the case. He hates Floyd Landis, like with a passion. Like, oh, things could be worse, and he's like, no, things are pretty good. I mean, yeah, they could be worse. I could wake up every morning as that piece of shit Floyd Landis, and he kept going over and over about that.
I did hear you mention that. Yeah, that seems like that's his sticking in his craw most definitely is the Floyd Landis issue. But
Yeah,
it's definitely on my list of things to watch. It's funny you mentioned Michael Jordan there. I did watch a recent piece on him in his high school and college years, and kind of comparing him and Len Bias.
Yeah.
And kind of like they're friends. They were friends off the court, having gone to the camps and everything together. But just on the court, it was like, no, you're the enemy, and I am an absolute cold-blooded, competitive killer. And it seems like those guys have that consistent streak, whether it's him or Lance, where it's, when you're on the bike or you're on the court, you're just absolutely out there to kill.
Yeah, and Lance's thing was not to win; it was to win and by as much as possible, and make sure you know it. And that's maybe the joy. Did you say Len Bias?
Yeah.
So he's the one that passed away, right?
Correct. Yeah, and it seemed like there was a little added fuel there for Jordan, because there was talk about maybe Bias is his equal, or at the very least a rival. So kind of Jordan took it upon himself to like, no, I'm going to make a statement, and we're not equals. We're friends off the court, but on the court, I am far away better than you.
Yeah, it's a unique. I don't know that I ever want to kind of be that person in my own life, but it does bring out some unique spectating for sports, and for good or bad. We love those kind of heroes and it's all entertaining, and I hope we get more entertainment this year from cycling. Any other stories, nuggets you want to pass along, or comments before we head out for the weekend?
I guess a question. So what's next on Jason's tour of the canal? I heard something about Beatty coming up. I mean, that's a far stretch from the canal, but it would be an interesting challenge for the group that's been out doing the canal series. So it'd be an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah. So I live close to Beatty. It's a climb out in kind of bridges the gap between Folsom and El Dorado Hills, Serrano area. And it's a steep little short area that has a kick. But anyway, from bottom to top, he's going to end up doing one. So you come down Golf Links, turn right on like Alexandria that connects to Beatty, and then that Beatty that connects all the way to the top there. And it's not an easy, the really tough section. I think Tori Phillips has that record, and then Adam Switters, and there's a few other pretty good climbers in there. And that's going to be the difficult section that it has, but it starts even below that. So it's got a little kicker there too. And I think Lars Laughlin has the record right now, a little over 8 minutes, but the next guy is like 9 something. And I could see some huge gaps, obviously, in this one. So yeah, there's no canal connecting this ride to at all. But I'll be interested to see the participation, because it's not just a climb that most people do. I ride that area like a ton. I go out there multiple times a week, and I specifically have avoided that road in last several years. Maybe I've done it once or twice, and I used to do it a bunch, but it's not fun.
Yeah, it's not something that you can go up easy. It's got a steepness to it where you have to work pretty darn hard just to get up it, let alone get up it fast. So that it's confirmed that it's going to be something with Beatty for next week, though.
He put out the course there. So yeah, you turn off a Golf Links pretty much right, and it's going to start there. And then, I mean, there's a steep little kicker before you get to the Beatty proper. And then Beatty itself is the tough part. And then there's a little descent. And then that next part is not as bad, but you've already, oxygen debt, your arms are hypoxic, and you're tasting blood. And that's usually just me. So
it'll be interesting to see if there's anybody that hasn't done these segments before that comes out for this one, knowing what it is. So I don't think Lars, for example, has done any of the canal series, but if his KOM gets started, I could see him come out and put down a pretty good mark, or Cole making a good effort again as well.
So, yeah, see, I think Cole would be a great one. He just put up a 350 up the Beatty yesterday after doing like a 90-mile ride and doing the whole segment on the canal as well. And 350. So I think the Beatty, the super tough section on that is like 330-ish or so. And he put up a 350. Who's at 347? Yours truly. So take that, Cole.
That's impressive.
Tailwind, as Andrew says.
It must be, yeah. That's another thing. It seems like anybody that's making a genuine effort on Beatty, they pick a day based on the wind. And this canal series is like, no, it's on Thursday, the end. So There could be some fast times, there could be some real terrible times. But It seems like bottom to all the way to the top. That's kind of Nielsen Palace's time
Yeah,
window.
he's in Europe right now.
He might make a trip back. I mean,
Right.
It seems like it could be worth the risk. But I hadn't seen that was the official course that's been rolled out, so I might try that one again and just get humbled by the climber type.
So some word of advice out there. I think if you can kill it, that main section that I just said Cole did 350 on, that is going to be the crux of the ride, because that's the one that will kill you. Like if you go too hard, you're going to be totally dead for the rest of it. You go too slow, it's going to take way too much time. So that one's going to have to be feathered in there. And if you look at Lars, I think when he put his time up to the top, this is why I think his is really difficult, because his Beatty time's right close to 4 minutes, which for me is a really hard effort. And yet he was able to push it all the way. So I kind of hope he shows up too. That'd be kind of cool. There's got to be some climber joker out there that can do it. And maybe that's you, Chris, if you get the car.
That's not me. The one thing that is, I'm not sure which of the routes Jason selected to get you from the first half of Beatty to the top, because there's a couple little options you can take there, but both of them are really steep. So I think, like you said, even if you get through Beatty, if you sell out for the first half of Beatty, you're going to be in a world of hurt for that second half. Because, I mean, there's quite a few pitches in the kind of 10 to 15% range there as you kind of get up to the top part.
It's the first left that kind of goes by that little park and then takes a right. So that's, I think that one actually is a little more forgiving than straight ahead, just from my years of when I used to ride that a ton. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, maybe, seems like there's some folks that can come out and put up a good time. There, so.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
No, I look forward to trying that one. Not really.
I do too. So Chris, that's that music. You know what that music says? That music says it's time to go. And so I appreciate you joining in today, and everyone else in the Between Two Wheels podcast. Chris, I'll see you out on the road, I'm sure. I hope, right? You're going to be out there?
Yeah, eventually, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, stay safe, everybody. Episode 182, Between Two Wheels podcast. Chris, I appreciate you joining us. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook. Share the show. Just click a like button for us, for Pete's sake. All right. Take care.
Bye.